This is Group 3 Reporters for topic Students with Learning Disabilities in Chapter 6. So, at the end of our lesson, we are able to first recall the concepts on the learning process and the different stages that a student undergoes when efficient teaching and effective learning take place. Second, explain the concepts on mental ability and the measurement of intellectual functioning. Third, define the term learning disabilities. Explain the criteria in determining the presence of learning disabilities. Fourth, define attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Explain the syndromes in the areas of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Fifth, explain the causes or etiology of learning disabilities. Sixth, discuss the assessment procedures in identifying students with learning disabilities. Seventh, enumerate and describe the special education programs for students with learning disabilities. And last but not the least is manifest patience and understanding in teaching children with learning disabilities. So, we hope that in this chapter, you will learn a lot from our reports and understand very well how important to study about the students with learning disabilities. So, let us welcome Miss Carla Katipan as our first reporter.
Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 3 and we will be discussing about the basic concepts on learning, mental ability, and learning disabilities. In the process of learning, there are two main concepts in term learning disabilities, and these are describes the learning process, explains the phenomenon about children who have average or even above average ability to learn but who experiences difficulties in learning. So what is learning? It is a process by which experience and practice result in a stable change in the learner's behavior. But permanent change of behavior is not a result of maturation or growing up through the years, but learning results from the efficient teaching that develops the learner's genetic capacity to learn to the maximum that is conducive to an effective teaching learning process. Thus, the learner manifests an understanding of content knowledge and demonstrates the ability to perform skills. Learning can be inferred when students' performance and behavior indicate the achievement of the long-term goals that was set. Students' cognitive, affective, and psychomotor skills and competencies are enhanced by knowledge gained and performance of activities being taught every day. So in the stages of learning, there are 3 stages. But before that, let me share to you something important. Learning isn't a simple process from being not knowing to knowing state. So to understand it further, let us now discuss the 3 different stages. So the first stage is the knowing stage, wherein it has 2 sub-stages, the acquisition and reversion, and the proficiency and automaticity. So in the knowing stage, effective learning takes place when a teaching is planned very well. So here in acquisition, it is when instructional objective, goals, competencies, skills match the learning ability of the student. The teacher's ability to motivate the learner, delivery of accurate content through explicit and effective teaching methods, questioning techniques and evaluation strategies contributes in acquisition of knowledge and skills in learning areas. The conditions for effective teaching and learning are present. Student can learn and acquire skills from 0 to basic mastery of content and skills with about 85% accuracy. Using relevant instructional system and practical experiences further increases chances of achieving expected percentage of accuracy in executing tasks learned. So the next substage is the reversion, wherein skills and content learned earlier are further strengthened to increase accuracy and mastery. Correct practice, drill, review, and similar strategies are used with immediate feedback and reinforcement. With continuous, efficient, and effective instruction, relevant practice, coaching, and feedback, student is gradually helped to perform the skills with at least 85% accuracy during the knowing stage. The next substage is the proficiency and automaticity. It is determined by the strength of poor learning. It is when mastery of a skill is attained, learner moves on to the substages of proficiency and automaticity. The goal is to attain fluency so that skills are automatically applied to appropriate situations in everyday life. Learner executes tasks without recalling the procedures. So the next stage is the using stage with its substages maintenance and generalization. So in the substage maintenance, students continues using the skills acquired with proficiency and automatically over time without explicit instruction, coaching, prompt, help, or reinforcement. Maintenance is achieved. Class activities allow students to continue experiencing meaningful practice of the skills in practical context. Appropriate feedback and reinforcement are given to strengthen the maintenance of skills. Learning of new skills is built on skills that are maintained, while skills that are not used will weaken even if they were learned earlier with proficiency. Next substage is the generalization, wherein once a skill is learned proficiently, it should be available for any use in any appropriate situation. And it has goals. The first goal is the learner to recognize a new or different stimulus as a prompt to apply the learned skills. Next is to use the acquired skills in various situations, behaviors, settings, and time. So the last stage is the inventing stage with its substage adaptation. So student recognizes the need to apply learned skills in situations outside of school, introduces changes or modifications in skills, and applies them to meet the new situation without help or prompts. Those skills have learned earlier, student is able to think how they can be used in a new situation without assistance or coaching or prompts. Here is an illustration on how the stages of learning takes place in the case of students with learning disabilities. Here is John, a third grader with language disability who goes in a regular classroom. He is an enthusiastic learner, willing to try almost anything. He is one of those students who first responds to questions, no to similarities and content discussions, but also the first one to jump to erroneous conclusions. Without careful monitoring, he is apt to end up practicing skills incorrectly. Teacher will keep John at the acquisition stage longer to achieve accuracy of learning. Practicing will be carefully monitored to attain proficiency and automatically.
Good day everyone, I am Shola Marie Alcuya and today we are going to talk about children with learning disabilities. So first, it is going to take a look at the definition of learning disability. Learning disability is a reduced intellectual activity and difficulty with everyday activities, which will affect someone for their whole life. According to Department of Health, learning disability is a significant reduced ability to understand new or complex information, to learn new skills with a reduced ability to cope independently, which started before adulthood. The term learning disability was introduced in 1963 by Dr. Samuel Kirk. He is a well-known American special education expert. His research at Illinois was the first of its kind to study exceptional or special needs learners, and it pinpointed gaping holes in curriculum for students with learning disabilities. After 50 years, the college and the Department of Special Education looked back and looked forward at the Samuel A. Kirk Symposium, which brought together leaders in the field today to discuss Kirk's legacy and relate exciting new breakthroughs in the field of special education. People with learning disability tend to take longer to learn and may need support to develop new skills, understand complicated information, and interact with other people. The problems experienced vary from person to person. It may include aspects such as learning new things, communication, managing money, reading, writing, or personal care. Some people are born with disability, whereas others may develop one as a result of an accident or illness in childhood. Types of learning disabilities differ hugely. Someone with mild disabilities may be able to live independently with minimal support, whereas someone with severe and profound disabilities may require 24-hour care and help with performing most daily living skills. In the Philippines, special education for children with learning disabilities is only in its early years of implementation. Unlike the special education programs for children with mental retardation, giftedness and talent, visual and hearing impairments, and behavior problems that date back to 1950s, there are very few schools all over the country that have started to offer programs for children with learning disabilities. Children with learning disabilities are not children with mental retardation whose mental ability fall within below average in the normal distribution curve. They have relatively average or even above average intelligence who experience severe learning or academic problem in school, and they possess these three behavioral problems. First is inattention. A child will seem uninterested or like he or she is not listening. Second is hyperactivity. A child will seem restless and easily bored. They may have trouble sitting still or staying quiet when needed. And the last one is impulsivity. Children will do silly things to get attention, have trouble in following the rules, aggressive towards other kids, and they tend to overact to frustration, disappointments, mistakes, and criticism. In the toddler or early childhood stage, their parents may think that they are just simply naturally energetic, but later they will notice that despite the increase in chronological age and unlike their peers, these children fail to outgrow their inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity and generally poor school performance. Now let us move on to the viewpoint of the American National Joint Committee on Learning Disabilities or NJCLD. It is a national committee of representatives of organizations committed to the education and welfare of individuals with learning disabilities. This group will study the present status of identification procedures, interprofessional relationship in management of children with learning disabilities, and other issues of mental concern. And this organization issued and stated in 1989 that learning disabilities is a generic term that refers to a heterogeneous group of disorders manifested by significant difficulties in the acquisition and use of listening, speaking, reading, writing, reasoning, and mathematical abilities. These disorders are intrinsic to the individual and presumed to be due to central nervous system dysfunction. Learning disabilities may appear across the lifespan. Problems in self-regulatory behavior, social perception, and social interaction may exist in learning disabilities but do not themselves constitute a learning disability. Although learning disabilities may occur concomitantly with other handicapping conditions, for example blindness, deafness, serious emotional disturbance, or with extrinsic influence such as cultural differences, insufficient or inappropriate instruction, learning disabilities is not the result of these conditions. A group of disorders is heterogeneous. Therefore, it is possible that one or more disorders can occur and can be experienced at the same time. But there's no two learning disabled persons are alike in mental and behavioral characteristics. A child with learning disability may have difficulties in listening, speaking, reading, writing, reasoning, or mathematical abilities that affects his or her performance in school subjects. Children with learning disability cannot learn in the regular school subjects like his or her normal classmates. Although their mental ability is average or above average, they can meet many difficulties, especially in reading. When a child does not learn knowledge and skills in accordance with his or her potential to learn as measured by a standardized mental ability test, while his or her mental ability is appropriate to his or her chronological age, the child's performance in school shows that achievement is 2 or more years below the grade level. Thus, a 10-year-old with an IQ that is normal for a 10-year-old fails to pass the grade level although he or she has the ability to do so. And this phenomenon explained by the factor called IQ Achievement Discrepancy. It is a traditional method used to determine whether a student has a learning disability and needs of special education services. Learning disabilities is intrinsic to an individual. This means that the causes of learning disabilities can be organic, biological, genetic, or environmental. The organic and biological factors are traced to the central nervous system, particularly the brain. But mostly, the cause of learning disabilities is still unknown. Here are the 3 criteria in determining the presence of learning disabilities. The following criteria must be present when assessing children to have learning disabilities. First is a severe discrepancy between the child's potential and actual achievement. Severe discrepancy refers to one of the primary components of most states and/or local guidelines for determining if a student is eligible for special education services related to a specific learning disability. Learning disabilities is present when mental ability tests and standardized achievement test results show discrepancy between general mental ability and achievement in school. oral expression, listening comprehension, reading comprehension, written expression, basic reading skills, mathematics calculation, and reasoning are the pieces of evidence of discrepancy score of 2 or greater than 2 in intellectual ability and achievement in one or more of the mentioned areas. Children may show learning difficulties that are minor or temporary, in which case, a true learning disabilities are present. They are neither minor or temporary. The degree of discrepancy is such that special education is needed. They manifest specific and severe learning problems despite regular education efforts. Second is exclusion or absence of mental retardation, sensory impairment, and other disabilities. This criteria means that the child has significant problems that cannot be explained by mental retardation, sensory impairment like low vision, blindness, hearing impairment, emotional disturbance, or lack of opportunity to learn. Children with learning disabilities are not the children who are mentally retarded, sensory impaired, or physical disabled. We can determine if the student is experiencing learning disabilities if all the conditions for learning are present. And the last one is need for special education services. Teachers needs a unique, uncommon, and unusual quality of teaching methods and strategies in teaching children with learning disabilities. The strategies supplement the organizational and instructional procedures used with majority of the children in regular schools. This criterion is meant to keep children who have not had an opportunity to learn from being classified as learning disabled. Children with learning disabilities should progress normally as soon as they receive effective instruction at the curricular level that is appropriate to their current skills. That is why they need special education services to remediate their achievement deficiencies. That's all. Thank you and God bless.
Good day everyone, I'm Floremy B. Jumabok. So for today, I will discuss the learning and behavior characteristics of children with disabilities. So result of studies show that there are at least 99 separate characteristics of children with learning disabilities. So more than 500,000 combinations of cognitive or socio-emotional problems associated with the condition are possible. So the large number of learning characteristics makes it difficult to interpret research findings that can provide the basis for recommending effective teaching strategies. So learning disabilities may occur within the lifespan. The symptoms and characteristics can be manifested immediately after birth, during infancy, through the school years, and adulthood. So the first is reading. Possess the most difficulty among all the subject and the curriculum. It may be recalled the facet of curriculum are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Thus, reading problems are answered by deficiencies in language skills, especially the phonological skills. So these skills develop the ability to understand the rules of how various sounds go with certain letters to make up words called grapheme corresponds. So the difficulty in breaking words into their components sounds result to difficulties in reading and spelling. Next one is written language. Possess several problems in one or more of the following areas. So the handwriting, spelling, composition, and writing, which is illegible and slow. So studies show that these children are not aware of the basic purpose of writing as an act of communication. So they approach writing as a test-taking task. They write shorter sentences and stories. They do not use writing strategies spontaneously. So their written work showed the lack of planning, organizing, drafting, and editing. Next one is spoken language. Possess problems on the mechanical uses of language in syntax or grammar, semantics or word meaning and phonology of the breakdown of words into their component sound and leading individual sounds composed word. So next is pragmatics or social uses of language. Possess problems on the ability to carry on a conversation. So children with learning disabilities are found to be unable to engage in the mutual give and take in carrying on conversation. So while they are often agreeable and many times they find it difficult to understand idea. So conversations are marked by long silences and ability to learn the other person's statement or questions. So they tend to answer their own questions before the other person has the chance to respond. and they also tend to make irrelevant comments that make the other person uncomfortable. Next is mathematics. Problems are recognized as second to deficiencies in reading language and spelling. Next is these children tend to fail and be retrained in grade level. So the level of academic achievement tends to decrease progressively as the grade level increase. So they find their studies to be more difficult as they go up the grades. Next is behavior problems. Remain consistent across grade levels both in school, in community, and at home. So common behavior problems are inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. So in general, next one is in general, social acceptance. It is low. Some can be popular. Now, let's proceed the perceptual motor and general coordination problem. So children with learning disabilities exhibit visual, auditory, perceptual disabilities. This problem is not lack of acuity or sharpness in vision of audition in responding to visual and auditory perceptual stimulation. The disturbance is organizing and interpreting visual and auditory stimuli. Thus, they have problems in seeing and remembering visual shapes that leads to rehearsal of B and D. For example, they have difficulties in discriminating two words that sounds alike, such as meet and knit. So, or in the following oral instruction. So, they have difficulty with physical activities that involve gross and fine motor skills. They tend to drop things as thought they are all thumbs or have two left feet. So, they have problems with attention and hyperactivity. Now, let's proceed the memory, cognitive, and metacognitive problems. So, problems in memory, cognitive, and metacognitive areas are related. So, if there is problem in memory, then there are also problem in understanding or cognition. The problem show that in difficulties in remembering assignment and appointments, so though smart, the students forget the lesson easily and also deficits in memory because they do not use memory strategies like rehearsal, categorizing, and use of mnemonics. So there are problems in cognition that covers different aspects of thinking and problem solving. So disorganized thinking occurs as a result of problem in planning, organizing their lives at home and in school. So difficulties in metacognition result from lack of awareness of skill strategies and resources of person task effectivity. So a child with a mild learning disabilities manifests deficit in cognitive functioning that show in poor academic performance in the different areas of learning. Reading, language, and mathematics are subject areas where they find the most difficulties. So the area in cognitive functioning are most affected are attention, memory, and thinking, or the executive functions of the mind. So next is attention deficit. So selective attention, or the ability to focus the relevant details of the lesson in the first requirements for learning to take place. So children who cannot pay attention cannot focus on the teaching episode for a particular subject. So the deficits in attention results in inefficiency learning or no learning at all. So students with disabilities learning do not learn despite average cognitive ability because attention deficit. So they cannot scan all the sensory stimuli such as the instructional aids used by the teacher, and instead are distracted by extra news or unrelated things. They appear to lack of the ability to sort information as shown by the wrong responses that they often give when asked questions. Lesson. So selective attention can be increased through coding and efficient selective attention strategies. Next is poor memory. So poor ability to store and retrieve information or previous learning is very evident among children with disabilities. So they find difficulty in remembering mathematics facts, spelling, words, vocabulary, meaning, content, knowledge, and information. So studies show that as verbal or written rehearsal, coding or associating a new item with a concept already in memory. Imaginary and mnemonics are either absent, immature, or inefficiently used. So to help students with attention deficits, the teacher frequently call him or her back to attention. Likewise, they provide the students with study guides and summaries of the lesson. The teachers have yet to train the students to organize his time, his lesson, and herself. So he has to increase his ability to process information, develop selective and sustained attention, use rehearsal memory strategies, and self-monitoring strategies to keep track and continue to improve his own learning. Now, let's proceed to the problems in social competence. So problems and relating other people is not a characteristic of persons with learning disabilities. Rather, it is an outcome of the different social climates created by people in school, at home, and the community, and other places with whom personnel with learning disabilities interact. So, score in tests in social skills can change over time as they gain competence in social situations. Social competence may be related to social status. Thus, a disabled person may be popular, neglected, or rejected. They can have low social acceptance but can enjoy popularity, or they may have significant deficit in social skills but enjoy acceptance by their classmates and friends. One thing sure, these children can enjoy socially rewarding experiences in mainstream classroom. So now, let's proceed the last topic. Causes of learning disabilities. So the causes of learning disabilities are attributed to genetic and environmental factors. As discussed in Chapter 4, the genetic factors refers to the characteristics that are inherited through the genes, chromosomes, and deoxyribonucleic acid or DNA. So over the years, genetic researches show that learning disabilities tend to run in families and heredity is possible causes. So studies of identical or monozygotic twins where one fertilized egg and splits and develops into two separate embryo show that when the two twins has a reading disability and then the other twin is more likely also have a reading disability. So in identical, twins possess the same physical and mental traits. However, research show that this is not true. In this case of fraternal or dizygotic twins where two egg cells are fertilized and develop into two distinct embryos, or the fraternal twins carry different physical and mental traits. So that's all. Thank you and God bless.